So I would probably start with UFO stuff, and I would say, "Hey, if you heard about UFOs, what do you think about that?" You know, and I would see if they've ever heard of how countless people recount their same experiences, that they seem to be doing some kind of hybridization program. They take DNA from humans and mix it with their own alien DNA, you know, quote unquote, and then I would point back to Genesis 6, and I would say, well, in Genesis 6, it says that these were angels that were doing this. Fallen angels, yeah. And they might say, well, they were mistaken. It was really aliens, and they thought it was fallen angels. It's like, okay, well, let's explore that. And that's why I have a chapter on extra-dimensional UFOs. Mm-hmm. If these are things from another planet, there are things that the beings themselves and the crafts should not be able to do. Like, they're just impossible. The way that, let's say some of the craft, and these are coming from these accounts, and this is why I believe a lot of them, these are coming from normal lay people that have no background in quantum physics, no background in even what an extra dimension is, let alone how it would behave if it was introduced into our own. So they have no background in it, yet they're explaining things because I have researched it. I know that's exactly how an object that's extra dimensional would behave. They're
talking in language that they don't know really what they're talking about, and you have the scientific background to go, they don't even realize what they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that you can have a solid object seemingly split apart, come back together, grow in size, shrink, disappear, all of that stuff is perfectly possible without technology even, if it's an object of an extra dimension. And we as humans can't really, because we're three-dimensional, you know, in space. Yep. We can't imagine what a higher dimension would be like, but we can imagine, this is why I appreciate the work of Dr. Chuck Missler so much.
Yes.
We can imagine a lower dimension. We can imagine a two-dimensional universe that has no up or down. Well, if I interacted with that universe, what would that look like to them? I could put, let's call it Flatland. That's the classic example from the like the 1800s. I could put two fingers in Flatland, and any Flatlander in that universe would see two separate circles.
Yep.
And I could move them around independently. They would have no idea that it was attached to one being. Well, I think it's the same thing. And if I kept doing that and put my whole hand in there, it would look like those two circles converged into one big one as my wrist was going in. And then as I pulled it out, it would seem like these circles separated and then disappeared. It's exactly, you just bump it up one dimension. So these seemingly three-dimensional objects that people are seeing are doing the exact same things. They're splitting off, they're coming back together, and it makes perfect sense if there's actually more to this thing than we can see, because it's hidden in a dimension that we can't perceive, but part of it is breaching into ours. I think that's fascinating, and I don't think a bunch of people can just make that up. It's interesting too that kind of thing is in the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, when he sees now these are the good guys, but when he sees that in the very first chapter, this amazing image of the throne of God and these angels are carrying it. But when you really dig into the language, it says things like their legs are like, you could say fused into like one hoof. It's really weird. Or their wings are like fused together. But when you see these same beings again in Revelation, they're all separate. The difference is because I believe they're extra dimensional. I believe angels are totally extra dimensional, whether they're fallen or not fallen. And when they interact with our three-dimensional world, it's going to look like, there's actually a term in quantum physics called extra-dimensional unfolding. And it just means that if you're of a higher dimension, in a lower dimension, it would appear as if you're taking up, like different parts are taking up the same space. So where you have like the legs of these angels coming down to one hoof, that's not really what's happening, but it definitely looks like that. And Ezekiel is just reporting what he's seeing. This was 2,600 years ago. Ezekiel's not a quantum physicist.
Yeah, by no means. And
then the wings melding together and all of that, and the way that they behave makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense with what we now know about, and it's even been mathematically shown how extra-dimensional entities or objects would interact in our world. So that's a lot, but I would probably point to something like that because it's something relatable and say aliens can't do that. If it was aliens, if it was Martians or whatever, they would have roughly the same biological capabilities we have. We can't do that. There was recently a declassified CIA document, and I don't know for sure if this account really happened, but it's interesting because it said that I think like 30 years ago or something over Siberia. There were like it was like over a military base. They shot down a UFO. And the story goes that these five, what seemed to be like what we would call the Greys, these five beings came out, but then they all merged together into a ball of light and sent off this big flash and then turned the soldiers to stone, like all but two of them. And I guess because the two were behind trees or something. But I don't know if that story is actually true or not, but it's like if you were going to make up an alien story, why would you go that route with it? Because biological things, whether they're aliens or not, like no matter what kind of technology they have, they shouldn't be able to do that. That sounds like something extra dimensional entities would be able to do. And again, it behaves just the same way. These five seemingly separate things can merge into one thing and then set off this blast that turned them to stone. That kind of reminded me of the whole pillar of salt thing.
Yes, for sure.
Speaking of Days of Lot. So again, I don't know for sure if that account is true, but just the fact that stories like that are out there, and I don't see any way that, like, who would use that story to try to say, yeah, aliens exist, Martians exist, and they can somehow do this. To me, that's like, no, extra dimensional entities exist, fallen angels, just regular angels, demons possibly. Not possibly that they exist, they definitely exist. I just don't know if demons are extra dimensional or not. But at least some of these things are. And that's how they behave. People are reporting on it, not knowing what they're looking at. They don't have a background in quantum physics. So to me, that's really strong evidence. Yeah. So